Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. Thanks for joining me today. Parliament's back after 6 months. Yes, there's so much to talk about, but I want to have a look at the two caucus speeches yesterday, first by Mark Carney and then by Pierre. Do a compare and contrast because it's interesting what's coming out. And also what the liberals, the cowardly liberals, couldn't do yesterday. We'll be back momentarily.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Hi. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for giving us the thumbs up. Thank you for just supporting the station in any way you can. Please share it, like it, share it with your friends and family, though, because we are finding that what YouTube is doing to suppress the content of small c conservative contributors like myself is that they don't open up the algorithm to new viewers. So we're reaching the same people. And one way around that is for you who are subscribers is to share it with your friends and family so we can open up the algorithm. So thank you for watching. My name's David Krayden. As you know, I'm broadcasting live from Ottawa. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. We've had nothing but bad weather through most of May. Last Monday was Victoria Day, and it was horrendous. So we've got lots to talk about today. And of course, we got the speech from the throne tomorrow, which I find fascinating. But before I get to that, here's what the Liberals didn't have the courage to do yesterday. They voted against the Reform Act. What's the Reform Act? Well, that was actually Michael Chong's legislation. Conservative MP Michael Chong, who said that a caucus should have the right to insist upon a leadership review and even to turf the leader. That's what happened, of course, with O'Toole, the last conservative leader. Time was up for O'Toole. And it was a conservative caucus that decided to turf him, first of all, then have a leadership vote. And that was as a result of the Reform Act. Now, you remember how all of these Liberal MPs were whining and complaining about the fact they couldn't get rid of Justin Trudeau because the caucus had no power. They couldn't even order a leadership review. So what did they do yesterday? They voted against the Reform Act because they're afraid of reprisals. They're afraid that their vote might be made public. They're afraid that somebody might find out that they want that kind of power. And a caucus should have that kind of power to get rid of a leader. It's a good piece of legislation. But what I want to do here is go through Mark Carney's speech. Listen to what he's saying here. And then to go to Pierre and listen to what he's saying. On the surface, these sound like very similar speeches. But this is what Mark Carney wants you to think. This is the impression he's trying to give, that, hey, he's just like Pierre Poilievre, which is ironic, of course, because what did he say about Pierre Poilievre during the campaign? He's Donald Trump light. He's mini Donald Trump. He's a Canadian version of Donald Trump. But now, of course, Mark Carney is sounding more and more like Pierre Poilievre and acting more and more like Donald Trump. It just never gets any more bizarre than it does in Canadian politics. And this is one of the strangest phenomena I've ever seen. But once again, as I've said, words have different meanings. Words have different meanings for liberals, conservatives, socialists, capitalists, communists, fascists. They have different meanings. So when Mark Carney's talking about affordability, it doesn't mean the same kind of affordability that Pierre Poilievre's talking about. And when Pierre Poilievre's talking about safe streets, that's not what Mark Carney's talking about when he's talking about safe streets. But let's have a listen here. Look at the crowd. Just strange here.
Let's get to work. Let's get to work. Il faut travailler. C'est le plus nécessaire pour moi de poser ma question traditionnelle. Qui est prêt? Parce que seulement. Oui. I don't have to ask whether this room is ready. I know this room is ready. This is the room. Yes, you are. Because this is the room. This is the room that helped the Liberal Party gain over 300,000 new members in the last 6 months.
But of course, they weren't allowed to vote, were they? They were disqualified from voting during the Liberal leadership campaign. This is ironic. And what are they ready for? Everything about Mark Carney's speeches, everything about his words is vague.
This is the room. This is the room. No, this is real work. This is real work. This is the room that won our party a strong mandate at the most crucial time in our nation's history. 8.6 million votes. Who's counting? 8.6 million votes. The largest, the most votes in Canadian history. The largest. Yeah. The largest vote share for the Liberal Party in nearly half a century. The largest women's caucus in our history. The largest. Hey. Hey, CC. And if it's the largest women's caucus in the Liberal Party's history, it is the largest women's caucus in the nation's history, and we need to get it even bigger in the next election.
It appears to you, as it appears to me, he doesn't even know what he wants to say. It's almost as he's waiting for someone to deliver the talking points. Because this should be a triumphant moment for him, because he's the prime minister. Yes, he won the election. It's his first address to the caucus after that election. And he really sounds like he's searching for words to say. But watch where he goes when he does finally.
We have the largest BC caucus ever. Right. Notre plus grand caucus québécois des 45 dernières années. Merci beaucoup. So, representation in every province, representation in the North, 169-member caucus that is the conscience of this party.
Three short of a majority.
You know what the issues
God
are in your
that.
communities. You know what the priorities are of Canadians. You know the scale of responsibility that we have been given, and it is enormous. Our government has been elected to do nothing less than define a new economic and security relationship with the United States and build, and there's a lot of ands in what I'm about to say, and build the strongest economy that works for everyone. Canadians also want their life to become more affordable. They want their communities safer.
There. Affordability and safety. And Pierre Poilievre said the same things throughout the campaign. And he'll say the same thing in his caucus speech. But Mark Carney is talking about two different things here. And now he's resurrecting the fact that, we have to redefine our relationship with the United States. I thought that relationship was over. But no, Mark Carney cannot decide from Monday to Tuesday, from Wednesday to Thursday, where he stands on this great divide between Canada and the US. Some days there's no divide. Other days it's too much of a divide ever to heal.
We will deliver these mandates with urgency, and determination. We are going to get going from minute one. Well, we are starting as we aim to go on. This is one of the most rapid returns of Parliament in Canadian history, and it will be one, and Steve will detail, one of the most busy returns to Parliament in Canadian history because of the moment. Demain, c'est le retour du Parlement. Le lendemain, Sa Majesté, le roi Charles III, va lire le discours de trône et ainsi présenter le plan de notre gouvernement, nos priorités, alors que le Canada fait face à un moment charnière. A world that's more dangerous and divided, most so since the end of the Second World War. The biggest transformation of the global trading system since the fall of the Berlin Wall. The reality of the impact of our long-standing weak productivity that's making life less affordable for Canadians and is beginning to strain our government finances and starting to put at risk the social programs on which Canadians rely.
This is the only truthful statement he will make in this speech. He's admitting here, if you listen to him carefully, he's admitting that he wants to destabilize the world economic currency, meaning the US dollar, and he's admitting Canada is on the brink of catastrophe. We're teetering on the brink of economic disaster. And he's admitting the interest payments are so much they're going to subsume the entire budget. And yet, he refuses to say when he will release a budget.
These are the challenges we must face and turn into opportunities. Opportunities to give Canadians the Canada that they deserve. Opportunities to transform our economy to be the strongest in the G7. Opportunities to build new partnerships with reliable allies. Opportunities, indeed duties to secure our sovereignty and make our communities safe. To get going, we're going to introduce several key pieces of legislation, and Steve later on will go into this in more detail. But it's about making life more affordable immediately for Canadians, legislating that middle-class tax cut, legislating the cut in.
Is $185 going to make life more affordable for you? Probably not. But that's all Mark Carney can come up with. That's what he means by affordability. He's going to give you a little tax cut, but he's going to take a lot more back in carbon taxes that are coming from corporate carbon taxes, as well as the carbon tariff, which he hasn't talked about in a while. But once again, everything Mark Carney says is so vague, it can be taken in 100 different ways.
The GST for first-time homes. Nous allons travailler de près avec les provinces, les territoires, les communautés autochtones pour identifier et accélérer la réalisation de projets d'intérêt national. Des projets qui vont relier le Canada, renforcer nos liens avec le reste du monde et accélérer la croissance de notre économie pour des générations à venir. We'll introduce immediate legislation to fast-track these projects of national interest and to eliminate all federal barriers to free trade in Canada as our contribution to free trade on Canada Day.
But of course, he can't do that. He can't unilaterally do that because there's provincial jurisdiction involved. Is he also intending to overrule provincial jurisdiction over natural resources? That's really where he's going with this.
We'll work relentlessly to keep Canada safe as a sovereign nation and to keep Canadians safe in their communities. Nous protégerons.
Now, how many times has he said, keep Canadians safe in their communities? Where does he get that line from? Well, Pierre Poilievre, of course, says that. He said that throughout the campaign. He said that before the election. But Mark Carney is trying to appropriate that. And if you're a conservative, you're supposed to hear, oh, he's just like Pierre Poilievre. If you're a liberal, it means he's going to make it safe. How? Probably by reducing and eliminating misinformation and disinformation. That's how Mark Carney wants to make Canada
La
safe.
souveraineté canadienne en rebâtissant, réarmant et réinvestissant dans les forces armées canadiennes. Oui, beaucoup, hein, beaucoup.
Yeah, we will.
Ce sera un grand changement, chérie. Un grand changement. Beaucoup de discussions, beaucoup d'actions en ce qui concerne les forces armées. Nous allons renforcer la sécurité de nos frontières en fournissant de nouveaux outils à nos agents frontaliers, nos forces policières.
Yeah, of course, now he's talking about border security.
And we are going to legislate to toughen the criminal code for those who are threatening the safety of Canadians by making bail harder to get for those charged with stealing cars, with home invasion, with drug smuggling, with human trafficking.
So here he goes, stealing Pierre Poilievre's bail policies. And in French, he talks about strengthening the border. Well, they've got a border security plan that they introduced with the last fall economic update. Remember, we've talked about this at length. $1.6 billion over 6 years, but they haven't even introduced a budget to finance it.
Et dans toutes nos actions, Monsieur le Ministre, nous serons guidés par une nouvelle discipline fiscale. Notre gouvernement va et nous be very, very busy in the next few weeks. But we are going to be very, very busy in the next few months. We are going to be very, very busy in the next few years. We're going to have to do things previously thought impossible at speeds not seen in generations. And your commitment.
All right, that's the biggest bullshit speech you're going to hear until he talks again. Because once again, it's all of these great things they're going to do, but there's nothing defined. And they haven't even got the budget to do it. They're going to continue to appropriate funds without the consent of Parliament. Now, let's listen to Pierre Poilievre's speech to caucus the same day, and you'll hear some of the same points. But Poilievre has once again really picked up on what is popular with Canadians.
Ended our coalition to include union workers, young people, newcomers, and others who had never voted before. They voted for hope, for a change. And while we narrowly missed forming government, we now have every duty to fulfill that hope and fight for that change. And that change means a Canada that is affordable, safe, self-reliant, and united. And those are our priorities for this session of Parliament. And priorities take plans. Our plan, first, we've got to get the cost of living down. And we're going to be demanding a spring budget that reveals the true deficit, lowers spending, taxes, and inflation. Second, to get homes built by cutting taxes and red tape on construction. Third, to restore economic independence by unleashing our businesses and our resources. Fourth, to bring safety to our streets by locking up dangerous offenders and securing our borders. And fifth, speaking of our borders,
didn't you just hear that from Mark Carney about safe streets? That's incredible how Carney is mimicking Pierre Poilievre, intentionally mimicking Pierre Poilievre, but talking in such vague terminology and without any sort of definition of what his policy is, that he can basically promise anything.
And priorities take plans. Our plan, tell you what a plan is. A budget is a plan, is literally a plan. And at first, his finance minister said there would be no budget this year for the first time outside of COVID in approximately 2 decades. Then the prime minister came out and said, well, there will be a budget, but it will be in the fall when half of the fiscal year is over. How do you budget for something that has already happened? Maybe they think that budgets will balance themselves. We need a budget to cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and corporate welfare to generate the savings for lower debt, taxes, and inflation. For too long, workers and small businesses have carried this morbidly obese government on their backs. They can't afford it. They can't bear it anymore. Lowering the cost of government will lower the cost of living. We must unburden our hardworking people so that they can go further and reach higher. With stronger buying power and lower taxes, our incredible workers and entrepreneurs will have their work rewarded, their purchasing power preserved, and our economy strengthened. And speaking of our economy, our second priority is economic independence for Canada. We all want a permanent end to tariffs with the U.S., and we will work with the government to help make that happen. I've already told the Prime Minister that we are happy to cooperate any way we can to bring about an end to this unnecessary dispute and restore our sovereign, not just our sovereignty, but also tariff-free access to the most successful international trading arrangement in the world. And we can't help but note that the Prime Minister promised during the election that he would put his elbows up and apply dollar-for-dollar tariffs that would raise tens of billions of dollars. Now, let's be clear. He said that it would raise $20 billion this year alone, and he published that in a platform released after he had quietly eliminated most of those tariffs. So how is he going to make up the money? And why did he put his elbows down when he said they were up? Look, despite the Prime Minister's doublespeak, we will work, as I said, to help him try and get a trade deal to put an end to the tariffs. But we also need to focus on making our own economy more independent and self-reliant, so that we're no longer vulnerable to such international surprises. That means unleashing our industry and its mighty workers to make things here for ourselves and for overseas markets. It's not enough to say you want to build. The government must remove the laws, taxes, and rules that stand in the way.
What do you think Mark Carney is going to build? It's going to be Soviet-style housing, because he's not really prepared to reduce everything that stands in the way of productivity in this country.
Doing so will allow us to be self-reliant from the U.S. by building mines, pipelines, nuclear and LNG plants, hydroelectric dams, and so much more. We must be the fastest place in the OECD to get a building permit, and we must have the lowest taxes on work, investment, energy, and home building. And speaking of home building, that brings us to our third priority. Conservatives will fight to free up land, speed up permits, and cut taxes on buyers and builders. We must restore the dream of home ownership that has been lost over the last Liberal decade. And nous voulons que ces maisons soient dans les communautés sécuritaires. We want those houses to be in safe neighborhoods. We want those homes to be in places where children can play outside, where seniors can enjoy a walk, where the cars don't go missing in the middle of the night. And that is why this session we will fight to end catch and release bail, house arrest, multiple murder discounts. We'll push for treatment and not drugs to free our...
Carney didn't mention drugs because Carney has no intention of curtailing either the use or sale or dissemination of drugs in this country. But once again, these sound like the same person wrote the speeches. This is an intentional trick by the Liberals to make you think that Carney's a moderate, that Carney could be a conservative at heart. But Carney is not talking about his whole agenda, and he won't. He's going to implement his full agenda but he won't talk about it first.
Our loved ones from the clutches of addiction. We want a drug-free Canada where people can get back on their feet and have hope. And we want to restore sanity to our immigration system. We must end the out-of-control liberal immigration by reducing numbers, capping population, deporting criminals, and integrating newcomers. Canadians are a welcoming people, but our healthcare, housing, and job markets are now overflowing because population growth has been too fast under the Liberals. We must also ensure integration. We must ensure that foreign conflicts are left at the door. No more rampaging anti-Semitic riots on Canadian streets.
Foreign conflicts are left at the door. How about that one in Ukraine, Pierre? Are we going to continue to fund Ukraine with billions of dollars? And sure, no, we shouldn't be marching for Palestine. But should we be marching for Israel right now, given what's going on in Gaza? No, they won't talk about that. They will not talk about that. We should be marching for Canada. Canadians should be marching for Canada. And it should be Canada first, not any other country first. And I'm afraid Pierre Poilievre hasn't got there yet.
So once again, our 5 goals for this session: bring down the cost of living with a budget that cuts spending, taxes, and inflation; boost home building by cutting taxes and regulatory red tape on construction; third, unleashing resources and businesses to free our economy from dependence on the U.S.; fourth, restore safety on our streets by repealing liberal laws, locking up repeat offenders, and securing our borders; and fifth, getting immigration under control. These are our goals, but our mission can be summed up in one word: hope, de l'espoir. When we expose liberal failures, when we argue about policies, we don't do it just to hold the government to account. We do it because we want things to get better. When we act as a government in waiting, we do it to provide the hope that things can and will get better in a future conservative government. We will present ourselves as a government in waiting to ensure that people know that that hope remains, the hope that our youth will one day be able to move out of their parents' homes and into their own, start a family in that new home with happy problems, like having to get out of the car when you get home from work to remove the hockey net so you can get the car into the garage. Knowing that kids were playing safely there after they got home from school, and that they will be in the House of Commons procrastinating about their homework. The families that need hope that their fridge can be full without their bank account being empty. The hope that seniors can return to that evening walk they used to so much enjoy until crime and danger interrupted it. The hope that our trades workers can again earn 6-figure jobs, digging mines, building pipelines, and constructing homes that other people can afford. The hope of restoring a country that takes care of its own, stands on its own 2 feet, united under one flag in the freest country on earth. The hope that the strivers, the battlers, the fighters, the ones who scrape by and fight on, the ones who get knocked down, but get back up and never quit and keep pushing forward, they won't give up, and neither should we. We are their champions. Their worries are our concerns. Their cause is our purpose. They are counting on us. They believe in us. They put their hope on us, and we will fulfill that hope for our people, for our country, for Canada, now and forever. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
All right, I'll give you my unvarnished assessment of that. This might not be popular with everybody, but I'm not here to be popular. Pierre Poilievre just said he's going to allow the Conservative Party to be co-opted by the Carney government as it fights the United States. Are they going to be co-opted on other policies? Because Mark Carney seems to have the same policies. Talking about safe streets, talking about affordability. He even talked about sustainable immigration, whatever that means. This is a recipe actually for disaster, because they need to fight to bring down this government, not to work with it. If this government continues for 2 years, there will not be a country to come back to. I can say that, I think, with some assurance. Because the longer Mark Carney stays in power, the greater probability of Alberta separating is. And this is not, if Pierre Poilievre thinks he's going to save the Conservative Party by being co-opted as a part of Team Canada with the Mark Carney government, it's not going to happen that way. This is not what Canadians who voted Conservative want. They want a real alternative. Mark Carney is not going to be just implementing a couple of policies on safe streets, which, of course, Stephen Harper already had policies like that a decade ago, 15 years ago. Mark Carney's not just going to be saying, well, we need affordable apartments and affordable housing in this country, so we're going to have Soviet-style block housing. Will Pierre Poilievre support that if he reduces the regulations to produce and build those Soviet-style block housing units? The country is in crisis. We are on the precipice of economic disaster. We are on the brink of a Great Depression. This speech was far too cooperative. And it sounded exactly like Mark Carney's speech. It sounds like we have the Uniparty. I hope we don't. But it sure as hell does sound like we've got two major parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, who are talking in unison. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of difference here. And I think that doesn't bode well for the country, because support for Alberta independence is at an all-time high, and it's going higher. And the probability of Alberta separating is very high. And people need to hear a real conservative alternative. Yes, I've been very critical of Poilievre today. I wanted him to win this election. You know that. But I'm not in any politician's pocket. And I'm here to give you my assessment in an unvarnished way. And I think I did that today. Now, we'll see what happens. I'm going to do, I hope, a live from the speech from the throne tomorrow. But I'm asking you, and a lot of people in the comments section are saying this, why did we bring King Charlie over here to do this? This guy is not a unifier. He's a divider. When I look at King Charles, I don't think of the Queen Elizabeth I knew in the military. I think of a guy who is in the pocket of the WEF, of the globalists, and who is in unison with Mark Carney. That's why Mark Carney invited King Charles over here, because the two of them are in complete agreement on the globalist agenda. This has nothing to do with Canadian history or Canadian heritage or love for the monarchy or love for Canadian values. It has everything to do with having a figurehead endorse the globalist agenda. And Mark Carney, he's talking very little about his whole agenda. He's talking very little in terms of specifics because it's coming. He warned us during the Liberal leadership campaign that he's prepared to use emergency powers to enforce his policies. And you're damn right he's going to do that. And right now, this is the calm before the storm. Because Mark Carney has a broad globalist agenda. It's involved with China. It's involved with the WEF. He wants to devalue the U.S. currency and the Canadian dollar. He's got broad plans. He wants to implement net zero policies. He hasn't changed. That's still on his radar. And that won't change. So watch for more coming in the future. And let's listen carefully to the speech from the throne tomorrow, and we'll be there. Thanks for watching today. I'm still recovering from whatever the heck I had that got me on Friday And it has been terrible. But thanks for all of your nice comments and support for that. I'll be back tomorrow at 10. I had to change the time because we had some technical difficulties, but I'll be back tomorrow at 10, and I will be covering the speech from the throne. Thanks for being here. Continue to resolve to resist. Let's continue to fight for freedom. God bless Canada. Godspeed to all of you. This is David Krayden, broadcasting live from Ottawa, and we'll be back.